Do you want me to do my clap thing?
Go.
We good?
This is the Luca Health Podcast, the show that goes beyond sport to understand the people behind the performances.
Today, I'm delighted to welcome Russell Earnshaw onto the show. Raised in Middlesbrough, Rusty went on to read economics at Cambridge University, winning Blues and beating Oxford in 2 varsity matches. He then went on to play professionally, winning the European Cup with Bath in 1998. Coaching followed, first leading Pertemps Bees to the fabled Great Escape from Championship relegation in 2010, before a number of successful years with England Sevens. A stint teaching economics at Eastbourne College followed before he spent 3 years with the RFU as international performance coach. Rusty then set up the Magic Academy in 2018 with fellow coach and Northeast native John Fletcher in 2018, where they worked with some of the best sports teams and companies on the planet to develop coaches and execs. So welcome, Rusty. It's really awesome to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for that, and that's a good introduction. Well done, you. Hopefully you don't need to record the whole thing again.
It's a pretty thorough introduction. But hopefully it's done you justice, Rusty. Cool. So to get started, I thought a little quick fire round to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, no, and by the way, Fletch will really appreciate being called a Northeast native, so I'm going to start calling him that from now on.
I mean, I don't know Fletch, I just know of him, so yeah.
He's the man. He is I actually messaged him the other day. I was lucky enough to get an award, and I just thought I'm going to message the 3 or 4 people in history that have helped me get that award more than anyone else. So I dropped him a message, and he's an incredible human.
Good stuff. Well, hopefully get him on the podcast one day. Right, Rusty, best travel destination with sport?
Oh, wow. Well, obviously we got Fred here who's going to overtake me pretty soon with his GB hockey stuff. I was very lucky. I coached England Sevens, didn't I? So we went to Hong Kong and Dubai and Wellington and Vegas, and the list goes on. The place I enjoyed playing rugby coaching or playing rugby the most was Wellington. So you go to a country where it's there. Culturally, it's their number one sport. You play in the Cake Tin in the stadium with 50,000 people, some of whom are watching the rugby, and people that understand and people that understand the game. So I loved going there. We were pretty successful there. I got good friends there, liaison officers, coaches, etc. And obviously I now do a bit of work over there, so I get to go back there and go on the pitch where we had lots of success. So it's kind of come full circle for me.
Very cool. Childhood hero?
Zinzambrook, David Campisi.
If there's one?
Zinny, just like skill set of a forward, skill set of a back in the body of a forward. And then, I don't know if you remember, he actually played for Coventry.
Did he?
Yeah, he came and played for Coventry, so I actually got to play. I think I played against him when he was at Quins as well, and it's amazing, isn't it? I played against Josh Cromfell when he was at Leicester, and
wow.
You get to play against, I remember the first time ever playing against this guy, Richard Hill, who plays for Saracens, and then I got to work with him. So I think sport does incredible things, and one of those is that you can, maybe we should bring back the old cups where you could, the lower league teams could play up and you get to play against some of your heroes.
Is it Cov in the Prem? Or?
No, they were in the Champ.
He came and played in the Championship. Okay, end of his career?
End of his career,
right,
probably
okay.
got a bit of cash.
Okay, fine.
He'd go to Japan these days.
Potentially. Early riser or night owl?
Changed. I used to be a night owl. I'd work till 2 or 3 a.m. and then when I was at Bees during that time, I had 3 weeks on a drip. Turned up in one night, just struggling in bed. Went to hospital. My wife woke up, didn't know where I was, no phone, all that stuff, and then eventually located me. 3 weeks on a drip. Now I am a really early riser. So this morning I got up at 4 a.m. Got on a train. I've cycled around London loads. It's been brilliant, and obviously I've come to you, and I've got one more visit. So.
I did receive a 5 a.m. text from you, so I think that was already answered in my head.
Yeah, that's common.
Yeah, cool. And you might have already answered this, but toughest opponent?
I actually played with him as well, and he might not seem like he was a tough opponent. When Zach Funati first came, he was a back rower, played for London Irish, and I was at Bath then, and I'd played for Cambridge. We played and actually amazingly beat Western Samoa, as they were called then, which was pretty cool. But then, I never really played regularly against like Islanders at that stage, and obviously there's way more in the competition now. Yeah. And Zach came and played for London Irish. We played against him at Bath, and I remember thinking, oh, here's a problem I haven't encountered that often before. So I think he scored a hat-trick.
Got it. Very cool. Great. Well, I feel like we know you now.
Hopefully.
Let's get to know you a little bit better. I was saying to you before we came on that I was doing some digging this morning in my tiny semblance of preparation that I did for this afternoon's chat, and I found on the Magic Academy website a piece of feedback that you quite like, and it reads, "I like Russell Earnshaw. He treads a fine line between genius and nutcase." Let's get to know this genius nutter. Can you talk about your background? Sort of, we know you're from Middlesbrough, but like, what were you like as a child? How's that informed where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like we're a product of our autobiography, aren't we? So I was born up north, working class, went to my open day at Cambridge, hitchhiked there. My wife questions whether or not...
Genuinely?
Yeah, genuinely. My wife questions whether or not I was loved by my parents. And yeah, I guess I was shaped a lot by my experiences of growing up. At about 13, Matthew England, who's my headmaster, said, you should go and play rugby. So I went to Stockton Rugby Club, which Jeff Parling came a little bit after me, and a few others. Yeah, like always, the other thing is, like, I know I'm up early, but like from an early age, like you have a paper round, you do some work in pubs, you do that. So I was always a grafter. I think later on I probably added the nutcase bit, if I'm honest. So I worked hard at school. When at 17 I worked out I wanted to go to Cambridge, I got super focused on being really good at passing exams, which is helpful. And then I think that I was actually having a discussion today with someone around going to Cambridge, and you are with a lot of kind of like-minded people, some amazing people that you go, ooh, quite excited to be in a room with this person. I could learn a lot here. And that probably like opened my mind quite significantly. It's a cool place to be. Gives me real energy. We've got I know you spoke about the Varsity match, we've got a 30-year reunion on this weekend, which would be pretty cool. I suggested 7 a.m. touch, and people said no, and I was like, why not? And I'm assuming it's because of the alcohol, but it's because of the artificial knees and hips. So people are like, I can't play touch anymore.
The artificial pitch up at the Stone X. Yeah. Well, maybe you weren't thinking that.
No, we're doing they're going on the Friday to Cambridge. I've got some work, obviously, and then I'm arriving early on the Saturday, and we're going to do a tour around the city with our ex-coach Tony Rogers. Now does tours around the city, so he's going to take us for a 2-hour tour around Cambridge together with all of our, Steve Cottrell's coming over from New Zealand, and people are coming from everywhere. So I'm kind of buzzing about that, and that probably then opened me up to maybe thinking a bit differently to how I was, and then. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I think it's probably been the thing that's helping me now. But it was one of the things that made it really hard to be a player, when you know that there are other ways of doing things and this could be done differently, and yet you are working in environments with coaches who are doing just the same old shit as they've done before. Excuse my French.
No, you're good. You're good. Okay, interesting. Actually, incidentally, I love a city tour. And I've actually done one in Cambridge.
Oh, nice.
When I was at the other
place. Was it with a really tall
yeah.
guy who looks like Herman Munster?
Yeah, I can't
And if it
remember,
was Tony Rogers.
It was good. It's a pretty town. That's cool. Okay, so your eyes were opened at Cambridge, sort of doing your own critical, independent thinking, and that's informed life after university.
I think so. And then I think if you were to look at a sporting influence, it would be Sevens. So the reality of Sevens is you can't have all the structure and detail and stuff that people are kind of obsessed with now. You actually, you look at the greatest teams ever, and they're not really following a plan, are they? You look at Sareva, you look at William Ryder, you look at Eric Rush, you look at all the amazing people that played the game, and Ben Smith, and lots of those players then transitioned into 15s and became world-class 15s players as well. And I loved it. And it gave you travel opportunities, and you connected with lots of different people, and then that opens up your mind even more to what's possible, and you're playing with skillful players, and you go, oh wow, that's pretty cool, I wonder if I could do that. And then you go and play 15s, and again, you're doing the same old shit every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Actually, while we're on the topic of uni and things like that, like you mentioned 30-year reunion. So you played in the varsity or the varsity matches at a time when they were big business, right? Like I Googled your 1995 team and David Humphreys was fly half.
He's got all their points, didn't he?
And like, no disrespect to the guys lining up this weekend, but there won't be any sort of like international rugby players playing, at least I don't think. At least not those at the start of their careers. But reflect on that experience for a second. So 70-odd thousand people at Twickenham.
Yeah, it was actually the largest club crowd. It was 82, I think.
It was 82, okay.
79 or 82 was the largest club crowd.
Google has let me down.
Yes, let you down. I wore white boots. We had to wear Mizuno. And me and Steph Jones joke about being the first place to ever wear white boots. So that was I was wearing white boots in 94. I got given some by a company that would, and then we had to wear Mizuno, so I just painted them with. So I was playing in boots with what's it called that used to rub stuff out with?
Tipex.
Tipex. I had Tipex on my boots, and played in the varsity match, and we won, fortunately, because it would have been disappointing to lose in white boots. And Dave Humphreys, played for them, and he scored all their points, and we scored, I think it was one of the first penalty tries in that game as well. So I do remember it. And at one point, Ben Ryan, who was on the bench for us, came on, and he was about to do a kick from 9, and someone dressed as a Viking tackled him from behind whilst drunk. So it was quite an eventful game, to be honest.
Brilliant. And excuse my French, did you get any shit for wearing white boots in 94, 95? Like I got some shit in 2008 for having bleached blonde hair and wearing white boots when I turned up to the Saints, which was probably fair enough, but you were,
I was backing, I'll be honest, I was backing it up.
Okay,
I would think at that stage I was backing it up. And at Cambridge, we were, we as you said, I played with Steve Surridge, got a cap for the All Blacks. Nick Warren got a cap for Wales. There were some good players in that team. Robbie Ash will be in the top 5 most skillful players I've ever played with. He was the fly half. We beat Queensland, we beat Samoa. It was a amazing time, and again, my son's currently at uni, and I'm definitely wishing he was having the experiences I had.
Yeah, cool. I heard on a podcast, I forget which one it was, but I listened to it leading up to this, that you really enjoyed your uni rugby / amateur rugby, and we'll get into you sort of being one of the first players to play professionally, but you enjoyed the pro game far less than you did those amateur sort of run-outs. Why? That's really sad sort of indictment, and actually, you did way more in pro rugby than I did, but that's exactly how I felt as well.
And can you, most people I speak to.
Right, let's dive into that a little bit. Like, why for you were the days playing at Grange Road with your Cambridge mates and then going out drinking, why were they more fun than lifting weights and drinking protein shakes?
Although we were definitely going out drinking at Bath and Rotherham. And so, why? Because, I guess just felt like we were a team and we were connected. And if I give you a couple of stories from Bath that probably help shine a light on why. So the first meeting we went into, we had the classic, valuesy type meeting. We sat there and we said what we're going to achieve and walked out, and 2 internationals said to me, well, that was a load of shit. So we've done that before. We're not going to win all those trophies. That's a ridiculous thing to say. Why did we all commit to it? Yeah. And then a few weeks in, a guy who's a British Lion and played for Wales, and you can work out who he was from that. The owner was in there, and he just said in front of the whole group, well, if you pay me more money as a bonus, I'll play better. And I was like, wow. So I think it really and I see that a lot, and I work a lot in football as well, where what is really intrinsic motivation in lots of players, not every player, becomes really extrinsic, and you're actually trying to beat your teammate and get ahead of them, and you'll do anything to do that, and because you've got a match bonus on it, and suddenly the money becomes more important than the improving bit. It was really interesting. Again, my daughter said to me the other day, she does synchronised swimming, and she said, I love synchro, but I'm not sure I like the competition. And like the spotlight and the surveillance and all of that stuff that goes on. You look at these environments now, and they're way more, that I think people are better informed now. So there is some really amazing environments, don't get me wrong. But there's also a lot of environments where you spend your life under surveillance.
Yeah.
Everything's videoed. You think about soccer clubs, you're 9, 10 years old, no one videos your lessons and like reviews it with you. And
Hopefully not.
yeah, hopefully not. So I guess it was just that. It was like we were a little bit more free-spirited. There was less consequence and quite, you could try stuff.
Because it should be the dream, shouldn't it? It should be, it's got me thinking, at what age do you think that love of rugby or synchro or whatever sport it is, I imagine it's the same across the board. Do you have two years, maybe if that, in a pro environment before you think, this is my livelihood, this is my job?
Yeah,
if you're going to pay me more, I'm going to play better. Do you know what I mean? Like there must be sort of like a tipping point, and that presumably is as much because of the environment as it is on the.
Yeah, and if I give you a couple of quotes from current England internationals, I won't name them, but
you can if you want. It will give us some more reach.
Rusty, I'm coming to terms with that. I'm never going to enjoy rugby as much as I did when I was 18. Rusty, of course I don't try the things when I was 18 because I know that if I'm going to get shouted at on a Monday morning in a review meeting, I'm not going to try something on a Saturday afternoon. It's like sad, eh?
It's rubbish, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's everyone. So again, I'm definitely like, there's some amazing environments and there's some cool places and there's some people doing some good stuff. And I would love to play for Toulouse. And I would love to play with the coaches that I work with.
The pleasure to move more.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you familiar with that? Lubasak?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all of that.
Mr. Sam Peters, one of our advisors, has actually been heavily involved in that. And,
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? But I'm sure most people don't know what that is.
Yeah, so Toulouse is probably the best player development. Maybe we could, we might compare it with Fiji. But Toulouse is definitely based upon principles, keep the ball alive, the life of the ball, encouraging people to understand really helpful support positions and way less structure and what are people's strengths and how do we integrate those and combine them to create something beautiful. And something beautiful will be important for them as well. It's interesting, isn't it? There's a real debate with England at the moment. We're winning games by a point. I wonder if we could win with style and win by more points with style. And, obviously, Genji's just come out and gone, old players don't know what they're talking about. But our game isn't isn't smashing it at the moment, is it? It's got some challenges.
The Scotland game was horrendous,
But I mean globally, our whole game has got some challenges. And so, and again, it depends, doesn't it? What do we think the role of the England coaches is? It to win games of rugby? And that's cool if it is. But I think there's a bit more than that, with actually inspiring kids and getting them into the game and all of that stuff.
Completely agree. I sat on a panel at actually St. Peter's event the other week, and I kind of just made the point that rugby hasn't had a good news story for a very long time. Way back we had Bloodgate, the whole head injury crisis, clubs going bust, long-term incentive plans. It's no one ever speaks about how good the product is or anything, and actually the product's pretty poor. That's the point that you're making. But it's because there's no innovation happening and coaches are being rewarded for winning games by 1 or 2 points, as you say, like Borthwick. What needs to happen in order to get youngsters engaged in? Because I can't believe it is just because of the whole concussion thing. I can't believe people don't want to play rugby for that, because of that. I think people don't want to play rugby. Parents don't want kids to play rugby because of that. I can understand that line of thought. But how do we make the game more interesting, more attractive, so that kids do actually want to go and watch Harlequins on a Saturday afternoon or watch England if they get the opportunity to? Is it something to do with the rules? Is it how we work with the media or lack thereof in terms of making celebrity of the players? Talk a little bit about your thoughts on how rugby can be infinitely more popular than it is right now.
And maybe we need heroes like young Fred here on Instagram, or I know we were talking earlier and joking about Marcus's stuff, but yeah, I think we need heroes. Other sports have heroes and heroines, and I guess some people are trying to do that at the moment, and hopefully with good advice. I'm not sure it's the laws of the game, because there are definitely some teams that are playing rugby from the gods. Like Toulouse are playing rugby from the gods, aren't they? Like
100%.
And last year Saints were playing like rugby from the gods, and probably struggled, missing a couple of their players this year, but they're still like developing like the Hendies and the young players who are coming through.
That's because they got Mr. Vesti, right?
Yeah, and they got Tom Vesti, which probably leads beyond to that. It's coaching.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, the quality of coaching, and of course, like lots of us are ex-players, and I wouldn't want to do any of their jobs, by the way, but I do think that I'd spoke recently to an international coach, and again, I won't name him, and said like, well, 3 things have you done this week to help yourself become a world-class coach? And he said, oh, that felt like a punch me in the face, because I haven't. And I'm like, that's weird. Like, this should be...
This is elite sport.
Yes, it's like, this is like cool, eh? And so, I'm not sure that... I think there's some amazing coaches. Again, I see some class coaches. You know, you look at Marcus and Nick Boy at his school, and, you know, loads of good school coaches, John Mallett at Millfield, and then you go down to some clubs on a Sunday and see some incredible coaching going on. And then I think that some people get given a job and told to do it, and they're learning on the job, and it's, you know, it's probably equally tough for them, and they're on the hamster wheel. So I think coaching is critical. And then the last thing for me is like versions of the game. So cricket is probably way more traditional than rugby is, and yet has so many different versions of the game and has brought the sport to life. And there will be some disruption stuff in rugby coming soon.
Do you know that?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Give us
a little taster.
I can't give you a taster.
You're under NDA with World Rugby, right?
And it's not with World Rugby. And I think there needs to be a version of the game in between touch and rugby that's called Hugby, that is a bit more like contacty stuff, but safe for people and develops contact skills. Because the reality is, at a young age, when we are often physically not as literate as we would like to be, we are going into contact situations as a young person with, you know, brain and all that stuff. Yeah. I think there needs to be a transition. I don't think you should move from doing your timetables to doing quadratic equations. And we do that in rugby. Excuse my maths.
The third game? You're familiar with the third game? No?
After the match stuff.
The what? After the match stuff?
Well, then...
third game was like a third game between touch and 15-a-side rugby, which...
No, okay. I thought you were talking about in...
St Paul's came up with, St Paul's School, just across the bridge from where we are now, and they had like an afternoon festival with 4 other schools. I think Hampton were involved, a few other London schools, and I don't think they had one injury recorded. They had Simon Kemp, who's head of medical at the RFU down there, and everyone was sort of like, well, this is cool. You weren't allowed to pick off the base as a number 8. Jackal was completely eliminated, and there was something, you're incentivised to score out wide. So I think you got 7 points for a try if you scored between the 15s and the touchline. And maybe that's what you're not allowed to talk about. I have no idea, by the way. It
sounds cool, doesn't it? And the people are doing that, but until the NGB does something about it, in the same way that, you know, every weekend you see, 90-0, 80-0 posted results, pointless games of rugby. Again, the NGB doesn't do enough to give people the permission and the skill sets to even games up.
Yeah.
Because again, that's not growing the game. Like, why would we have a mercy rule at 50 points? It's absolutely ridiculous. Again, let me use a maths analogy. We're putting some kids in top set maths, and they don't know their times tables.
Yeah.
And well, of course, they're not going to keep playing the game.
Can I just say something on like making a game that's more and actually more suited to young? In fact, I'll just say something. I've just come from a Sevens festival at St Benedict's in Ealing, and the standard of schoolboy rugby in this country is phenomenally high, in my opinion. Now, I don't know what that looks like versus peers in France or Southern Hemisphere, but boys are offloading. They've got steps on them. Everyone can catch and pass in a way that I'm 35. I left school 16 years ago. No one could play sevens 16 years ago, whereas these boys, it's actual sevens that's being played. And so something has to be going wrong, just in terms of like the excitement of the game at the pro level, because there has to be so much talent coming through every year, and a number of those boys who are out there this afternoon will already be in Premiership academies, and then something's happening in those like formative years when they're making that transition from schoolboy rugby player to professional rugby player that's hindering their development. And maybe it's just because we've got the wrong people in those coaching positions, or maybe it's because those coaches aren't being developed. But the game should be way more of a spectacle. A good game of rugby is awesome to watch in a way that like the NFL is. So I'm sort of like going off on a bit of a tangent here, but like the NFL commercially has done incredible things and will continue to do incredible things, and yet the actual game's pretty boring. You got to sit through 4 hours, right? And they've managed to turn that into the mega business success. And we've got a game that's infinitely more interesting with so much talent coming through, and we seem to be messing it up.
Yeah, and they do franchises and they do have heroes, so they elevate people. I completely agree. I think the standard of schoolboy stuff is off the scale.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of interesting things there. My son's gone to uni. Like, think how many kids who are really good rugby players go to uni. And he's at Bath Uni. There's 4 teams. That's not many teams. If 300 to 500 lads each year who go from rugby playing schools, and there's probably space for maybe 50 of them. So that's that's like interesting to me.
We're losing them.
Yeah, and then watched England 20s the other day. Kepu does the kick. Kepu Tupilotu makes a line break as a hooker, does the kick. Like, everyone thinks it's the most amazing thing they've ever seen. You'll have seen that all day today. Yeah. I see it all day. Like, it happens loads. There's loads of innovative coaches who want to get better in schoolboy stuff, who are creating environments where kids can try stuff, and then they go into an environment where suddenly you might have to be a bit more serious, and you might need to not try that stuff because it's risky. And I actually watched, I'll tell you what was interesting, I thought it was a good game, but I don't think it was a great game. Bristol against Gloucester I watch a lot of rugby obviously, in the women's PWR this weekend.
Okay.
And I think there was less than 5 offloads in the game.
Really?
Yeah, there was lots of ball movement, but it was like 2 teams doing a team run against each other, and actually not thinking about how do we just go through, how do we penetrate, which would be one of the key principles around the pleasure movement. Is they were talking about pass, and Brian Ashton pass penetrate, that type of stuff, and people are just playing in their formations and getting into position off the ball and looking at their teammates rather than looking in front of them, and I find it frustrating, and I think the limiting factor is, if I'm brutally honest, and again, I caught up with Nigel Redmond, who's head of coaching at the RFU the other day, and he's asking me about some of this stuff. I actually don't think coaches are good enough to coach anticipation, deception, all that stuff. They are at schoolboy. You'll have seen loads of anticipation. You'll have seen a player recognise what another player's about to do and be there before you could have even imagined it. You'll have seen players doing stuff that was deceptive for the opposition.
100%.
And then we just coach that out of them.
So why is that? Just because of consequence? It actually matters. One coach, a coach's mortgage is on the line if the results go south, and so players don't want to make a mistake because they're petrified on Monday.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast, and I think it was Jamie George on with Youngsy and Dan Cole, and he was just saying, we can't just beat Scotland by throwing the ball around. I'm not asking people to throw the ball around. I'm asking people to make really good decisions, and I think we then change how people make decisions. So instead of what you saw today, decisions based upon the picture in front of you.
Yeah.
If we're on our line and they put 2 in the backfield, then we're going to run it. It's actually the best place on the pitch for us to run it, because there were, versus then suddenly what we start to do is go, and I've heard this, again, England players are rusty. If we have a ruck before the 10-metre line, it's long and on. All right, what if it's on the 9-metre line? Oh no, it's different then. Okay, but what if they put 3 in the backfield? So we're not coaching based upon the pictures, we're actually coaching based upon lines upon the pitch, and then it becomes self-fulfilling, doesn't it? Because if you're like Steve is and you are driven by data, then it just becomes self-fulfilling. Okay, well, we can't play more than 3 phases in an hour and a half, so everyone does that and they kick, and then the stats match up with it, then it becomes self-fulfilling, doesn't it? So I guess one of the other things that I think has influences is stats, because every single statistic needs context, and we rarely consider them with context.
Completely agree. Yeah, it's interesting. And you don't want to just bash coaches, do you? But let's get a little bit...
I'm not bashing coaches.
No, I know.
I'm actually bashing the fact that we don't support coaches well enough, and we put people into positions before they're ready to be able to do that. If we just to look at decision making alone, think about how do you really coach great decision makers? Well, there's a really good conversation with a player around decision making. How does it start? How does it finish? What are the coaching skills required to coach people to make great decisions? We don't help people with that.
So what does that look like? Okay, because I will just give my opinion here for a second. I think what needs to happen, there needs to be like a balancing of the hierarchy between coach, and this could be like really simplistic, and I'm sure this already happens in lots of environments, between coach and player. Like, players need to be empowered. They need to like be able to voice things, make a decision, make a mistake, and not be berated for it, which is really obvious, right? But I want you to sort of educate me, our audience, on how we actually do that, and how you think about that in Magic Academy and the teams that you work with.
By the way, I agree with you. So, the last time Quins won the Premiership, they were pretty much without a coach, weren't they? Like, that's an extreme example, but that release of, we can do some stuff.
What do they put that down to? They put, right, not just the coach thing, they put that down to some sort of, I can't remember what it was, there was a piece of tech or something. Anyway, that freed them up.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? I remember asking Marcus at the time, tell me the two or three things that have helped you guys win the competition. And the first thing he said to me was, you get Kit Kats for a tap back. I was like, what? He went, every time you win an aerial battle, you get given a Kit Kat, So I'm sat in a meeting with a player who once paid more money, and then, the players are like, give me a Kit Kat. So I think that storytelling element of it, but definitely the player ownership. Now, they might have gone too far with that at some point as well. So I agree with you. It's like getting the right...
At Quins?
At Quins, yeah. I think eventually they're definitely too far now.
Right.
They're 100%.
Interesting.
But how do you coach decision making? Well, like everything if I give you a really simple example from rugby, so expertise is in the eyes. So before you make a decision, you have to see something.
Yeah.
Experts look at less things for longer. So experts know where to look and what to look for.
Yeah.
So as an edge ruck, a Mark Smith, a George Ford, knowing Farrell, they know where to look.
Yeah.
Where's the end defender? What's the backfield look like? Who's excited in front of me? Where's my support? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Might be different for different ones of them. So we definitely need to help people see shared pictures. So, and in very simple terms, like if you're a defence coach stood behind the defence, you can't see where defenders are looking. So you possibly might want to spend more time with the attack setting problems for your defence. Mm-hmm. If you take away score and time in training, you're not coaching decision making. So we often take away really essential parts of the game that are important in decision making, because in rugby, 1 point up, 1 point down, last play of the game, 5 yards out, you make two different decisions. Yeah. One you run forward, one you probably kick backwards. And so I go to lots of sessions and I am surprised at how little time and score there is. And there's such simple things to add into your training. Or even, one more thing. So the reality is we play poker, not chess. Mm-hmm. So one of my first principles is we play poker, not chess. So if you practice chess, you lose at poker. Our coaches are practicing a lot of chess. We are not doing training sessions where we tell them this is what the opponent do, this is how we're going to do it, da-da-da. We then practice solutions. Yeah. We don't practice problem solving. We don't go, we've told the reserves to practice as best, and you got to work out what it is. And then you got to work out how to defeat it. Or even better, before they even do it, you've got to dictate to them so they can't do it. We don't train like that. We train chess. We don't train poker.
As in, we move players around on a pitch.
Yeah, so
along
chess,
with the ball,
everyone has all the information.
Many moves ahead.
Yeah, but I play chess against you. We can both. I know all of your pieces. I know what you're doing. Yeah, you probably would beat me. And then if we play poker, I see some information. I see some cards. Yeah. But I don't know what your cards are.
Yes.
We don't know exactly what our opponents are trying to achieve.
Yeah, I like that. And in terms of coach development, let's take a rugby club because I know that best. How are these coaches currently being developed, or is that not even something that's being thought about? We don't have to name names here, just your standard Premiership club in this country. I would imagine a decent amount of time is being spent ideally developing the players. Who's thinking, is it all on the head coach to develop, because I know what it's like. We have a few dinosaurs still left in this game, and people get very defensive and don't want to develop the assistant coach too much because they're then seen as a threat, right? And you see this with a lot with academy coaches, whereby academy coaches, it's happened at the Saints. We had like Ali Heifer, Rob Hunter, who had to move on down to Exeter, and then they did brilliant things. And Exeter obviously struggled in the last year, 18 months, but you can't question what they've done in the previous 5 or 6 years. What's happening in the club environment? What could potentially be made slightly better?
If I give a couple of examples, I think a great example is probably Sarri's.
Yeah.
Would invite anyone in, would let anyone in, but if you go in, you've probably got to be prepared for the fact they'll ask you more questions than you'll ask them. So they will go, okay, what do you think about that? Or what, how would you do that differently? Or they're definitely not preaching.
Yeah.
They would be pretty intense around coaches going and seeing other sports and spending time away from that. They've obviously got Mark McCall, who's hugely experienced and has the opportunity to oversee and coach like a Joe Shaw to become a head coach that he is.
Yeah.
They coach, their first team coaches would be around academy activity and know what's going on, and probably the same with Saints. I know Sam Vesti would know all the 16, 17-year-olds in the Northampton area and what they're up to, and again, they would be super welcoming of people into their environment and would be, contacting people and going, look, Rusty, can you connect me with these people, or can you connect me with that? So I think there's examples that are great, and then there's some that are less. I mean, if we were to do the same with the coaches as we did with the players, so every coach would have a development plan. That's rare.
Yeah.
Every coach would be videoed, and actually one of the things France did was they spoke about in their pathway, we moved the camera from on the players to on the coaches. I think if you could only put the camera on one of the two, you would put it on the coaches. They are the people having the impact. So, they would have regular reviews like players do. They would have a one-on-one with someone who was a mentor or the person that helps them get better. And like players, we would be putting them under constant pressure and challenging them to get better. And and then we would have a test. We would have a game at the weekend, or we would have a session in the week that's your test session, and we would video that, and we'd code it, and we'd give you feedback on it. And that doesn't happen in that many places.
It's because it's counterintuitive. Like, it's obvious it should be being done, but the more obvious thing is to focus on the players and trying to beat Bath on Saturday, right? And no one's really taking a big picture view here as to, well, if I'm actually better, then I can get more out of the guys who are running around out there.
Yeah.
And it's like very short-term thinking. But yeah.
And again, if you suddenly, I remember I always ask people, who's the best coach? Who's the coach that got the best out of you? Who's the coach that you would put in room 101 and you would never want to see them again? And loads of people have said to me, Wayne Smith. Budge Pountney gave me the best answer. He said, at the end of the season, my head hurt from thinking so much.
Wow.
He was like
Elon Musk.
Yeah, I learned so much in that season, Rusty. And so again, if expertise is defined by the peer group, if Wayne Smith was over here, then suddenly we'd have a new 10 out of 10, wouldn't we?
100%.
Because if you are, I don't know, if I'm the best coach in the area and I'm a 3 out of 10, everyone thinks I'm a 10.
Yeah, completely.
And so that's problematic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all context.
And it's interesting because one of the coaches that I mentioned earlier about the schoolboy stuff, and it wouldn't be hard to work it out, was actually in conversation with England about potentially being an attack coach at one point.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, that would be so good, because he's such a good coach and he would do a brilliant job. And that would actually raise, I think we were all really hoping that Stu Lancaster was going to smash it with England because of the, he's not an ex-player, he's a coach's coach, and he hasn't, and he didn't. So, well, he didn't.
Everyone says he's the best coach that they work with, be it a fellow coach or be it a player, whatever. And 2015 was disappointing. Wasn't it?
It was disappointing.
I really wanted World Cup.
Yeah. So if that had worked out then, I think that that could change stuff.
Yeah. What about learnings from other sports? Right. I think of Pep Guardiola, obviously having a tricky time at the moment, but I was pretty interested when I think he left because he won everything at Barca, didn't he? Then he went to Bayern Munich and won everything there. And then I think it was after Bayern, or it might have been after Barca, it doesn't really matter. He took a sabbatical year and he went and lived in New York because he just wanted to change the scene, freshen things up. And then he went on this whistle-stop tour of the planet, visiting all the best sports teams and organisations. Didn't matter what sport it was. In fact, didn't visit any other football clubs, which is telling, because he wanted to go and learn what everyone else was doing, which is something that I don't know whether that happens in rugby. I can't imagine it does, but I imagine we could learn a huge amount just from some fresh perspectives. Have you done anything in that respect?
Yeah, loads, like my
Go
life.
on.
So
You're a multi-sport coach.
yeah, well, I am. So people are often on the hamster wheel, aren't they? If you work in a competition like the top 14, where it's like a 40-week season, then it's quite hard.
How many weeks?
To do
40.
that. Yeah, by the time you've done, pre-season and pre-season games, and there's a lot of matches. They play in Europe. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's certainly not like the Premiership's relatively, like, people are like twiddling their thumbs at the moment, quite frankly. Aren't they?
Yeah.
I haven't played a game for
fair.
ages.
Fair. Yeah, unless you're a youngster,
So it was interesting. The person I was just thinking of there, I don't know him, but Tom Williams was the Jersey Reds coach who went to Newcastle Falcons and just lost his job. Well, I do know him, and I'm connected on LinkedIn, and I'm like, oh, he's going to...
You must know him really well.
He's going, exactly. He's going to loads of places now, and like that almost sabbatical, or you lose your job, or I remember Fletch saying to me, everyone should do a sabbatical every 3 years. And it should probably be put into your contract as a coach, and that you have to do a 2-month sabbatical. I've been lucky. I've coached age grade hockey. I've coached some international cricketers. I've coached loads of academy footballers. I've had those kind of karaoke moments that are quite stressful, and then you go, oh, okay, like, I've learned something from that. In other sports, it's really common. I mentor on the FA Technical Directors course, which is a pretty amazing course, and they go and spend time in the US and go and see some of their franchisee type stuff they spend over here in football. And again, salaries are pretty open to people coming in. It would have been really normal. We had, when I was with England Rugby, we had football coaches come in. There's some guys that were at Fulham Academy that would have coached England 18s, which is pretty cool for them. They still talk about it. And then we asked them, they had to get some great insight for us, actually. One of the, we just went, look, we just want you to look at it with, like, we're not going to colour your lens. Fresh eyes, naive experts. Like, just tell us what you noticed. Tell us what you noticed about the players who you think are the best. Tell us what you just... And they just gave some real simple things. Like, one thing they said is, Rusty, you're speaking about creating players that can do everything, but you immediately divide them into forwards and backs. And I was like, that's a good point. So we just started calling them low numbers, high numbers, because we just wanted to change that perspective.
Right. Yeah.
And interestingly, I've heard a few commentators recently using that language, and I was like, oh, it's finally catching on. And again, it's like when Kepu kicks the ball, everyone goes, oh, why is he kicking it? He's a hooker. That's ridiculous. He'll be thrown out of the front row club. Well, maybe like of the old front row club, but not the new one.
Yeah.
So I think, I've learned loads from other sport, and it's not just sport, is it? So the best place I go to, we just took a bunch of, we're working with the highest potential England cricket coaches at the moment, and took them to the Brit School. And
the what school?
The Brit School in London, which is where I guess like Adele went, and a performing arts grammar school, central London, has to raise $2 million a year because the government don't value creativity in the arts. And we took them there because we knew it would change their perspective on some stuff, and it did. And people were like, okay, like that's a different way of thinking about it. And when you go there, like, the kids are way more in charge of their own development than they would be in most environments. It's hard to tell who the teachers are. They look like the kids, they're dressed like the kids, they're often not at the front of the room. Kids are turning up early to get there and leaving late. It's a very cool environment. 95% industry ready, so people who are then ready to go and like thrive in the workplace. Again, like, how many academies or how many schools could say we are creating people that are, in inverted commas, industry ready?
None.
Yeah, not that many.
You know, it's just, I probably don't have time to get into that, but
take people to Google. Again,
we could do a whole podcast.
Yeah,
on that.
Google's probably a good place as well. It's not a sport place, but I've got a mate who works there as head of creativity, and we go and spend time there. And again, just
it's head of creativity at Google.
Yeah, get them to
that's
a fresh
a pretty unbelievable job.
That's a cool job.
Do they still? They used to be famous, isn't it? That, you know, you're an engineer at Google or whatever position, and you'd be allowed to spend 20% of your time working whatever you want. I think that's how Gmail...
Not so much now. Not
so much now that it's
lots of
a public company.
I think
and
Google
stuff
Maps
like
that.
And but there were some like massive internal businesses created because... You know,
one of Kirk's principles is, you know, when and where do you do your best thinking? And actually, like, you have to step off the treadmill, and that's the challenge of coaching, is like, you've actually got to probably be quite intentional to putting out a bit of time where you go, I'm actually going for a walk today for 90 minutes, and I'm going to solve some problems. I'm gonna like turn off my phone. I'm going to just go and get in nature, and I'm going to problem solve. I'm going to think things through. I'm going to go for a walk with someone else who can give me a fresh perspective. And I think as a leader or as a coach, or as, you actually need to be. I'm super intentional with my weeks and thinking about energy and where am I creating like moments to go and recover, and exactly like players. Like coaches are the same as players. If we've got to perform on a weekend, or we've got these 3 sessions in the week where we have to perform, or you're in business and you have to nail this presentation, then we should be thinking, okay, what am I doing the day before? What's my recovery look like? What am I doing the day after to like recover? What's my, when am I reflecting on it? Where am I getting feedback from on this? Again, and the classic, we're really happy giving players feedback, and we rarely get that much feedback ourselves as coaches.
Totally. I like that. But I think that thing, where you have the autonomy to go off and do whatever you need to do to get yourself into the right headspace, be it somebody working at Google or a player or a coach, you need to have the autonomy in that organisation, and that comes from trust. And I imagine some of these sports clubs are like, if you're not in the gym, on the physio table, or out on the field, you're doing nothing. And some people, right, so let's get into this.
First in, last out. Yeah, put your mask on. Pretend you're all fine.
It's worse than the corporate world, isn't it, at times? But you touched on something there, which is one of the things I want to get into, which is probably more of that like personal development type stuff. Like you say that you're super intentional about how you're splitting up your time in the week in order to achieve different things. I think, that's probably a space that athletes could tap into way more. I think it's probably a space that they're not hugely exposed to or educated around. I think a lot of this stuff ultimately is individual led, and you have to have the interest and take the initiative in order to go and learn about these things like meditation and reflection and journalism and some of this like quote unquote like wokey spiritual stuff, which I've spent the last sort of 18 months really getting into, and this shit works. Like undoubtedly. So would love to learn a little bit more about how you divvy up your time and things that have worked and things that haven't worked in that respect. Yeah,
and if you think about like I've been watching Starting Five on Netflix, and LeBron, who's playing at like 60 in the NBA, and like with his
how old is he actually?
He'll be playing
like
with
40.
He's 40 odd. Yeah. He'll be playing with his grandson, so he'll be playing with his son and his grandson in the same team. But like the stuff he does. And of course, that's a different scale because of the money he has. Yeah. And then you look at, so you look at like Marcus's video, and he's got a hot tub, and he's got a cold thing, and he's got a sauna, and he's got all the stuff that
burning incense,
he knows is going to help him. He's burning incense. Yeah. It's going to help him with his recovery. Like, and then you go down a level, and you might go, look, what does it look like at that level? It might be a bit of mindfulness. It might be like creating reflective time for yourself. I mean, the challenge for me is I'm self-employed, so it's hard to say no. So I'm getting better at it. You need to show up. So that is, you do have to think about recovery. I will, like as an example, I'm going to the Lido on Friday. I've got a long week. I'm actually working this weekend, so I go to the Lido in Bristol. Shout out to the Lido in Bristol. It's like, honestly,
how cold is it?
It's cold. It's cold. But it's got a jacuzzi, it's got a sauna, and it does the best food I've ever eaten in my life anywhere on the planet.
Are you a shareholder?
I am not a shareholder, and there is no longer a waiting list because the waiting list was years. So you just pay and go. And I book that in regularly. I book in a cranial osteopath probably every 6 weeks. Yeah. Just go there and fall asleep, and he like does some magic on me. I've mentioned this before, I do monthly challenges around stuff. The one I'm doing at the moment, I'll tell my wife, is that every time I see my wife, the first thing I do is go and hug her, and I'm just seeing whether it leads to better outcomes for me.
Don't know if we can get into that.
No, exactly. But it may be something that sometimes, like when you're on the treadmill, you forget to do those simple things. I've previously done, as you know, like giving up coffee, 100 press-ups a day, 500,000 steps a month, running 10k twice a week, some dietary stuff. Like just try stuff and then see whether it sticks, and some of it sticks and some of it sticks less. I just give it a go.
But you experiment.
That's the word.
Yeah.
Loads. And in Christmas, I book all my kind of trips for the year. I book 10 days in Spain. I booked 10 days in Canada. So I know that I've got stuff to look forward to. Yeah. And trying to get better at eating better. My wife gives me grief a little bit. I'm trying to, I don't drink, so chocolate.
Is it?
I love chocolate.
Well, Lent started today.
Oh, well done.
Has it been given up?
I haven't had chocolate today yet. So.
You haven't?
No.
There you go.
Not yet.
Just another 39 days.
I have had a McDonald's milkshake. So, yeah, I guess I think of it as an experiment. And I'm sure that it's, if I'd done it 10 years ago, I would have come up with some of the different hypotheses would have worked, wouldn't they? So I guess you're trying to find it out.
I think it's just a case of just being intentional, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
if you're not intentional as to how you're spending your time or what you're eating or drinking or consuming, then you're sort of just passive, reactive to life, and you just sort of fall into a bit of a drift. And then before you know it, you're in a place where you don't want to be necessarily.
Yeah, well, the guy I'm staying at a mate's tonight. He had a stroke and heart bypass last year. It's the first time I've seen him since then, and just like that suddenly hit him, and now he's living a different life, isn't he? And
wow.
He could have probably avoided lots of it if he'd lived that other life a little bit earlier. So, I'm at the age now. I'm at 50 in a month's time, and people are like dropping a little bit. I had one period last year where there's about 8 or 9 people I know died in about a 3-month period, and you go, whoa, okay, right, and a few heart attacks and stuff. So I was definitely, you become way more mindful of this stuff, and the minute you have kids, you're then going, oh my God, I'm now responsible for some other little humans. So I'm definitely just in a different place, aren't you?
Health is everything, though, isn't it?
You have one body and one mind.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or whatever. Just.
You get me on the politics now and the
little and
NHS
often. We can go there if you want.
No,
I think you've got a coaching session, so I think we might have to wind this up pretty swiftly. But this has been great. Thank you for, just going here, there, and everywhere with us. It's been a very enjoyable conversation. We've got some closing questions, which we like to ask everybody who comes on the pod. Favourite book?
It used to be Sapiens, and I'm getting a nod from over there, so I'm appreciating that from Fred.
Fred's well read.
He's well read. And then the other one, which I don't think Fred will have read, I'm looking for a response, is The Other Wesmore. So it's about a guy who's a Rhodes Scholar, writes speeches for Barack Obama, is called Wesmore, and he reads a newspaper one day and there's a guy who's killed a cop and gone to prison, and he's called Wesmore, and they're the same age and they come from the same area, and so he gets really interested and connects with him in prison and goes and visits him and asks about it, and same start in life, single parent family, same kind of socioeconomic demographic, and then just their lives take different turns, and it's about the people you meet along the way.
Very interesting. I'll definitely check that out. He's the governor of Maryland, right?
You sound like you know.
And I'm not actually as sort of well read or as informed as that makes me out to be. But I spent some more time on your website earlier, and I was going to ask you about favourite quotes or mantras, and one of his came up. When it's time for you to leave this school, leave your job, or even leave this earth, you make sure you've worked hard to make sure that it mattered that you were even here.
Oh, it gives me goosebumps though. I went to Kevin Bowring's funeral last year, and they couldn't squeeze everyone into the church, and it was a big church, and the ripple effect of his life on others is significant. So I think that's the thing we can do. Yeah, exactly. As I said, Trump doesn't think that. Trump thinks that it's competition. I don't think it's a competition. I think it's about impact on others, ripple effect, and clearly coaching gives you an amazing opportunity to do that.
Undoubtedly. I think you're doing a pretty good job of that as well, by the way, because everyone I talk to about you says, without blowing your own trumpet, you're nuts, but you're also a bit of a legend. So you're definitely leaving a lasting impact, so keep up the great work there. I guess final thing, sounds like there have been some important people in your lives at various stages that have led you on the path that you're now living out. What's the best piece of advice, even, that you've ever been given?
It actually makes me, I'm sure I've been given lots of good advice. My wife is amazing. She's probably the person that's the best of it. But and this isn't going to be transformational for anyone, but sometimes you're just not aware. So I always think everything starts with awareness. So when we were with England, Dean Ryan came in, and he's the worst boss I've ever had. And I've had some bad bosses. And And then the day in, where I remember I have to walk past the room in Loughborough quite a bit, and Fletch came up to me after the meeting. He said, "You do realise every time Dean speaks, you shake your head." And I thought, mate, that's really helpful. And so I guess my nudge there is always like everything starts with awareness. You can do that in a really kind, helpful, timely way. And that's what Fletch did to me then. He didn't do it in a bad way.
Yeah.
It was really helpful.
Yeah.
And it was pretty timely because it's probably if I continued for a week, I might have lost my job.
Wasn't going to help the career.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a good place to leave it. Thanks, Rusty. It's been awesome, and best of luck with all the teams you're coaching and everything moving forward. And we'll get you back on the pod sometime, hopefully. Thanks, mate. Perfect. That was the Luca Health Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, subscribe for more content like this. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube.